Hi everyone, welcome to the Ops Cross Stage ThinkBIG session. This is our session number, I think, 5 or 6. Yeah, and I probably will skip this part about explaining the format because I think I see everyone who is on the participant list was with us before, so everyone is familiar. So for today we have a little bit of a shorter session, I think, because we have just one topic, James. So we usually spend like 25 minutes, but I guess if we will feel like taking a bit longer, we could. I guess we will see how it's going. So all attention to you.
I will take all the time.
Yay! We have an exciting topic today. So James, I'll just hand it over to you so you could start the introduction.
Sure. So we've been talking to a lot of customers about the topic has been around dashboards of sorts, but I don't want to focus on the feature. I want to focus more on the problem that they're having. And it's that signals out of their CI pipelines aren't there for them to measure and to look at and to understand performance of the pipeline and where there might be bottlenecks in it. So testing is just one portion of that. And so we're focused on understanding where are slow tests, where are slow test jobs, but there's other signals that they're asking for, and that in my previous roles, we found helpful in diagnosing slow pipelines of understanding, well, how long does it take for a job to start? How long does it sit and wait? What jobs are the bottlenecks? And I think we're starting to do a good job with DAG and some of the other things that expose some of those. But from a pipelines over time perspective, not just a single pipeline and looking at the run, is there data that we can start to expose and help solve those problems? And so that's kind of the problem space that we've been operating in. And the people we've been talking to are mostly team leads who are responsible for crafting their own pipelines, or directors who are kind of in charge of overall health and sometimes more importantly, budget of their CI/CD pipelines, of understanding, hey, how much can this cost? Especially if they're hosting their own runners in a cloud environment, how much are these runners costing them? Spinning things up in, AWS, GC, whatever cloud provider you might pick.
That was my exhale. I think we have to, this is a really humongous problem space from my point of view. Can I share something up really fast and maybe add some context?
Absolutely.
All right, let me share my screen. Share. How do I share? How do I share? Share. There you go. Sharing. So James had made some really interesting points. So pipeline performance is kind of one big bucket, signals, and then he started drilling into jobs and stats. I think the first thing is kind of like really understanding what pipeline performance means. And what I have on my screen is just one example of that question of pipeline performance, right? And it's not my area of expertise. And so Tal, keep me honest here because you've been doing all the great stuff with that and so on. What you see on the screen right now is some analysis that we did yesterday on behalf of a prospective customer of GitLab. And that customer said, hey, I'm looking to move to GitLab, but I'm comparing GitLab to CircleCI, to Bitbucket, and a few other vendors in the space. And in their specific use case, and here's where we get to the performance question, they were looking at the performance of a pipeline to build an Android app on those 3 different platforms. And an Android app, you use like Node.js and some stuff. So they're saying, my use case is we build Android apps, and we want to see how fast the pipeline for building our standard Android application, whatever it is, takes to build on CircleCI, GitLab, and Bitbucket. And initially, what they found was on CircleCI, the total runtime for a very basic pipeline that they would use took approximately 250 seconds. You can do the math. On GitLab.com, and this particular customer is interested in going to GitLab.com fully, not self-managed, which is another kind of like sliver of this equation of performance that James is pointing out. They noticed that the performance for that same pipeline, same exact parameters, just running on GitLab.com took 538 seconds. So really significant amount of time. So if you look at this graph right here, everything in red is the different jobs within that pipeline. and how long it took on GitLab.com. And so we spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks ahead of a call with a customer yesterday to kind of recap what we found, kind of analyzing pipeline performance for that specific use case. And then we came back with some recommendations. And in this particular case, we were saying, hey, we probably have to offer, optimize CPUs on GitLab.com. So anyway, with that said, I think the question of performance is super interesting, but super hard. And I'll stop sharing my screen because I don't know what is the goal when we say, hey, we want to surface like the performance metrics for a pipeline. Are we saying that, hey, you're running a Node.js app, it should take X, or you're running a microservices pipeline, it should take Y? It really gets into an interesting kind of problem space. And maybe the first iteration is just saying, hey, here's what things have been, here's the current baseline performance you see, and then we kind of go from there. Just wanted to kind of kick that off with a little bit of the conversation. So let me pause there.
Yeah, I think there's two different problems, or potentially two different problem spaces there. One is if you don't change compute, how can you optimize your existing jobs and pipelines? And the other is, once you've done that, is there opportunity for you to change the runner that you're on to run faster? Because at the end of the day, so many of these services charge by how long you've run, whether it's on .com with runner minutes, or if you're going to AWS, like can you buy the 4x compute, but do it so much faster that the price difference doesn't matter? Like, do those things don't scale together? Maybe. So I mean, maybe there's like down the road, as we're offering multiple different runner types on .com, we could, you could check a box and say, hey, find the best runner for me for each pipeline, and we could run like duplicate a pipeline every 100 pipelines on a different compute type, and say, hey, turns out if you change to this one, it'll run this much faster. And then here would be your projected cost, or how many runner minutes you would consume when you did it. Like that's a couple of iterations down the road probably, but thinking big, that instead of just saying, hey, here's the data, but if we take that a little bit further, we could say, here is how you can improve. This is the action that you should take.
James, did we have like a Vulcan mind meld or something? Like that's exactly.
I think so. It was all the sleep I got last night, crushing it today already.
That's a super. Sorry.
Go ahead. Oh,
I was gonna say that's kind of the crazy vision we were kind of like throwing around when I was chatting with Adrian this week and Juan. So yeah, if we could, and you're right. That is the absolute nirvana. It's like, hey, my baseline job takes X, and let's assume I'm .com. Let's just keep it simple for a second, and then you can talk about 7 nines, right? Because I could bring up a whole different ball of wax. But let's just say you're on .com's like, I guess maybe not. Forgetting .com as a match. Hey, my job takes X. James is right. I can quickly say, what happens if I up the CPU top, if I do this and my job takes? I think that's super nirvana. So yeah, James, that makes perfect sense to me. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah.
No worries. And from my perspective, if we look at if we're talking about ideas of how to solve for that, and just talking concretely about the example that Darren gave, from CI perspective, you also, there are ways that you can optimize a pipeline. If we're talking about comparing pipeline time to run, the way you author the CI configuration can make the pipeline run quicker. For example, if one of the metrics at the beginning, when James said, we probably would want to show how long a job takes to run. And with that data, a customer can say, okay, of these 3 jobs, job ABC, B runs the longest. And if you can author it in a way where there's no dependency of sequential running, where you can author it to run concurrently, that would shorten the amount of time a pipeline takes to run in its totality. And so that comes down to the keywords you use. Instead of jobs running sequentially stage after stage, you can do it through needs keyword, for example, to let them run concurrently. Again, if one of the goal is, in addition to optimizing compute and the best configurations for runner, there are also best configurations for pipeline. The example you had, Darren, it would be interesting to know if the way they configured their pipeline for the comparison, was it an expert who was doing the GitLab CI pipeline one to make it run optimally based on how it's authored?
Yeah, it was a very basic pipeline, and we had our team take a look at it as well. Spent quite a few hours looking at it. It was very straightforward, very simple, nothing super hard, no parallel runs. It was very simply, we knew it was going to cause a problem because there's Node.js. And every time we do Node.js pipeline runs in the runner, it takes forever because we have all this caching stuff that has to happen and putting them on the module.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was a very basic pipeline. And yeah, but you know, it's interesting, Kyle. I think if you kind of like take what you just said and what James said and create a vision, I think it's a super cool vision. And I'm thinking, and I don't want to kind of suppose a solution, but like your first iteration of the dashboard could just be, hey, let's just surface to the customer the performance.
Mm-hmm.
And we can tell them, hey, this in first iteration, we're just surfacing the performance of your pipeline so you can kind of see within the dashboard how things have been performing over time. And our vision is for them to use this dashboard in the future to make decisions about improving. And then we can figure out how we actually make that happen.
Yeah. So I think there's two data points there that are really anecdotal today or hidden in the UI. One of them is wall clock time. How long does it take from when a pipeline starts to when I get a result? And it doesn't matter what it is. The other is runner minutes. How many runner minutes are each of my pipelines consuming? So if we were able to start to expose that data or just make that data accessible in one spot, and like the pipeline charts page, I'm presupposing where it would go. That's where other pipeline stats are. It seems like a natural fit for it of just, hey, here's the data. Here's for each of your pipelines, how long and how many minutes it consumed. Like that might be a good start to see if people start to grab that and build their own charts out of it. Or if we expose it as a Prometheus metric or something, they can grab it and put it in a Grafana. Like there's a couple of different options there and build their own dashboards.
So one thing I wanted to share in the research that we did on the CI/CD dashboard and why we haven't shipped anything with that is users are really interested in analytics over time around pipelines, releases, and delivery. They're not looking for just an aggregation of their project data. So this seems really salient with what we're saying in this conversation here.
Yeah, I think if like hiding it in the pipeline is not gonna, like that's not the right persona that we would target. It's interesting, I think, for a developer to say, but then they just end up with that anecdotal data and maybe they can point at a single pipeline. There's a ton of work then to dig that out and look at trends over time. And unless you're seeing a trend over time, it's not actionable for you. So if you're a team lead and you know that, like, it feels like everybody's kind of playing a lot more ping pong this week. And when I ask them about that, it's always build times. I wonder if that's actually true. And you can look at that trend over time and be like, oh, well, what happened? Did we introduce a new job? Is it, that crummy code quality that's slowing us down? Whatever it might be.
So are we saying in the spirit of iteration, start with the very smallest thing, which is maybe 2 data points of showing how long it takes jobs to run? And I don't understand the part where in the agenda, James, where you said, how long does it take for jobs to start?
So there's, I've experienced, this is past experience. If you have a shared runner pool, so I'm thinking self-hosted, and you have a lot of different teams. Teams want to know how long it takes for their pipelines to start. What that tells then your team who's managing the runners is, hey, are we scaling up fast enough? Is our resource pool of compute big enough so that we can meet the needs of our development teams? What we found when I was in a past role is that we built auto-scaling groups and we'd basically have them run the clock because we were we were West Coast and Mountain Time based. And at 8 a.m., we would start to just schedule scale-up groups. And so we would always have a little bit of headroom ahead of as development teams were working. And then around 5 p.m. Pacific, we would start to tear them back down. And then it made, like we could use the scheduled and the spot instances on AWS to make that cheaper compute. That was our ultimate goal, was making it efficient while not having them wait a long time for those runners or build nodes or whatever they were to spin up. So it's maybe a different persona. It's your DevOps manager or whoever's in charge of, hey, I'm in charge of the runners and the budget for the runners.
Okay, gotcha.
So interesting. So that one, that description of those use cases, James, sounds like it fits more squarely into the other concept that we linked into in the comments in the agenda, which is the potentially, my brain's all over the place, which was that concept of not Jackie's director level CI/CD dashboard, but the runner enterprise management. I hate to use the term dashboard again. Anyway, for the runner enterprise management view, what we were thinking about at a high level is that today in the GitLab UI, you've got different views depending on which level you're at for looking at the runners. I know we're kind of getting off topic, but then we're thinking, look, we need to figure out a way to add more value to whatever that view is that you have access to, so that as a DevOps persona, you can do more things. And we just decided to have a discussion. And so when you raise this ThinkBIG topic, we were kind of thinking like, okay, how would some of the metric stuff that you're talking about fit in potentially to like, hey, I'm in the DevOps persona and I want to see what's happening across my entire portfolio today, and I want to make intelligent decisions proactively and that sort of thing. Is that interesting?
Yeah, you can take that a step further. And we were talking about different types of runners. You could even then start to profile within a pipeline. Like, does my unit testing job need a different type of runner? Or like, am I training a model and that needs a different type of runner than the rest of the job? So that you're only using the really expensive ones smartly and in the right places. Like if we think about taking that another step of what kind of runner do you need for your pipeline to what kind of runner do you need for every job? And you can start to do some like loose matching of, well, what kind of job is this? And maybe we even start to look at the GitLab CI YAML and see some of the things that you're doing in it and suggest to you a runner that is efficient for you. And like you could give them a scale of, well, I want it to run really cheaply and I don't care how long it takes, or I will burn a pile of money if I can get this back in 5 minutes, and give them some options in between, right?
I guess we're kind of assuming then that there is one segment of the population, one market segment of organizations that will choose to self-manage. Maybe it always gets kind of scrolly doing this, but let's just keep it simple. Choose to say self-managed runners for their CI/CD stuff. There will be one segment that chooses to self-manage. Within that universe that chooses to self-manage runners, you have roughly maybe two categories. Category A is, hey, I'm going to run these runners on public cloud, AWS, Azure, Google, Digital Cloud, you name it, right? The other segment might just be like, no way, this is running on-prem, IBM mainframe, Red Hat Enterprise. And so I guess the question for us as we think big about this is which segment, right? Because it might be easier for us to solve some of these cost management things with a public cloud user segment versus, you know what I mean? Do we need to think about that?
I'm going to say that that's your expertise of what that market looks like and the segmentation looks like, Darren. I'm only speaking from personal experience of problems that I've encountered, and we were running build nodes in public cloud.
Right, and the only reason I said it is because it's easier for us to, I won't say it's easy, like it's like, 5 minutes of coding and you solve the problem, right? But you know what I'm saying, right? At least with the public cloud, you're like, hey, on Google, it's costing you $2 an hour for this type of VM, and you can kind of like create all your cool dashboards. But if someone is like, that doesn't make sense for me because, Darren, I have a Red Hat Enterprise, on-prem OpenShift. I know what my costs are. It's irrelevant for you to have this kind of feature. Yep.
Yeah, I think that the problem space is different. For those folks who are self-hosted and they're kind of locked into their compute type, that we want to tell them about how do you make your GitLab CI YAML more efficient or more effective. And then there's interesting things around like this job just always passes, or if this job fails, this job's going to fail too. And I think Tao and the CI group are already starting to do some great work there, where you talk about how do you just reduce I think you reduce walk clock time in that case of getting from starting a pipeline to getting a result from a pipeline. We want to reduce that time. I think it's a different space to talk about, well, is my compute actually efficient?
And maybe these are templated experiences in the dashboard that we create. Like if you are a multi-cloud, cloud native, we have one CAN template that you can view. But then if you are a project or a group that is locked into the on-prem self-managed experience, you can also target that. What an opportunity canvas I'm working on right now is about non-Kubernetes deployments. And I'm learning a lot about organizations in their hybrid adoption of GitLab, and how GitLab doesn't really give them insights or meaningful information, and it's not incentivizing their leadership to move those move those legacy teams over to the GitLab.com, because it doesn't show like them, how am I saving time or money with this immense amount of change. So being able to afford like, hey, here's ways that GitLab can help reduce your waste and craft, even if you're not using us end to end for your deployment cycle. That's one learning that I also had. I do need to jump in like 5 minutes right now. So I just want to say one other thing. More tactically, I would love to help kind of break down the current CI/CD dashboard issue into segments for us to deliver across our groups. Because I think that what the problem we're trying to solve with the CI/CD dashboard is exactly what we're talking about here. It's administration of the return on investment that GitLab offers you. And I think that Runner is a big cost driver there. I think that CI pipelines are a big cost driver there. Continuous deployment doesn't have a cost driver with that because it's relying on a pipeline. The only thing is your compute and your resources that you have inside of your cloud providers, and finding ways to ingest something like a cloud health metric or displaying connected insights from Prometheus. So that's thinking like more big and around how do we look at post-deployment monitoring in the context of Kubernetes deployments, as well as on-prem or private cloud deployments. So as far as some next steps that I will take out of this, I'll probably ping James, you, and Darren so that we can kind of tether together these different dashboarding experiences. And whether this is, Darren, we cross-link your runner management board from the director dashboard, whatever we decide to create there. I just want us to kind of be thinking more about the entry point for customers to get this ROI management experience in CI/CD. I feel like we're missing that entry point today. Because we could nest this at the project level or the group level and have it in CI/CD insights, but that might not be discoverable for the director who's managing an instance level cost center.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think then if we kind of, what is the term you use? Insights management? I think that's completely appropriate. I think if you have an insights management, whatever it is, you can have that and still have, let's not use the term dashboards, you could have like runner enterprise management for admins and DevOps.
Yeah, like a module inside of that.
Oh, it just links, because what we're going to do with the management and the runner at scale is things like turning stuff on, turning stuff off, right? It's kind of like more of that turning the dial kind of a thing. And then you just like want to your point, now you want to like uplift, hey, what's really happening to your point? Then you can make sure it links nicely to whatever the analytics insights and meaningful information dashboard thing we come up with. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, this is super cool. I think one thing that's really not clear for me, though, which I probably need to spend some time on before you ping me, Jackie, it's kind of like, what data do we currently expose with Prometheus? What do we currently have today before we try to create something new? But this all makes perfect sense. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think Prometheus is great if customers are using it and instrumenting it, and if they're leveraging our auto DevOps templates and Kubernetes clusters. I feel like the organizations that would benefit most from having these insights are ones who are distributed and not necessarily leveraging Kubernetes exclusively. But that's kind of my gut reaction from talking to a bunch of customers with hybrid deployments that are like, my head's on fire because I'm an AWS, GCP, Azure, and I can't manage my costs because I can't compare them effectively. And that's a problem that I'm hearing time and time again.
Hey, Jackie, really fast. Do you guys have any mock-ups yet on by the way, is the director level CI/CD dashboard the same thing as your insights and meaningful dashboard concept?
Yeah, the insights and meaningful dashboard would replace the concept that we're calling CI/CD director dashboard. Okay. And we do have mock-ups, but the reaction that we've gotten from the market is not great.
Oh, really?
So
you're talking about the mock-ups that's in that director CI/CD dashboard?
Which just shows an aggregation of releases information and pipeline information as an MVC at the group level. Customers are like, I can kind of do this today when I extract information with the API. What I want to see is analytics and actions that GitLab is telling me to take.
Yeah,
They
they
want,
always want predictive dashboards. They want instructive dashboards. They don't want it just to sit there and report in because they want the mental workload taken off of them. Please just tell me where I need to do what I need to do. Make it even easier, have it be a button that I can just click and then GitLab will know and it will go modify the thing that needs to change.
Yeah.
Because I have 15 other thousand things I have to do. Please just make my job easier. The other thing that I don't know if we suffer from this, but I've heard it in the past at other companies is, why do I have now 10 dashboards to go look at? Now that's not actually helping me at all. I have 10, and don't put all 10 on one page either. That doesn't help me at all, especially if some of the information is dependent on the other information. They need the dashboards to be much more intelligent and talk to each other and level it up in a way that helps them make the critical thinking thoughts.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're hearing from users when we put the current mocks in front of them for the CI/CD dashboard. They're a little rudimentary in that it was a super MVC approach that we're just saying, hey, let's take the information that currently exists in GitLab and bubble it up at the group level. And people were not receptive to that. And it could have been the directors I was talking to. I talked to 3 different directors. We have a conversation with another customer, Rayana and I do today, to dive into some of their more nuanced needs around administering at scale as well. And they're actually purely cloud native, so that'll be a really cool take from them. But the general theme is, I want nuggets of insights for me to then take forward. And I want to know how that's doing over time and if I should change my behavior. So it's like, how do I manage change with GitLab? And today, if we just aggregate the current metrics and surface to them, we're not telling them to change.
yeah, Jackie, I know you have to jump off. I just linked in the chat, come.co, and if you kind of scroll down, they have in their marketing, it says decisions, not dashboards.
Yes.
I completely agree with you. I think, and you looking forward to having you drive this and supporting you, but if we can think differently about this and say, we have a GitLab point of view where we just not aggregating a bunch of metrics and then become a data analytics or BI shop. It's like, no, we have a point of view of producing something that allows you to make decisions in GitLab. That would be super cool, I think.
Yeah, like a CIC decision engine could be like the feature that we build. And it is like, here's a tab for pipelines, a tab for your deployments, a tab for testing. And we focus on those 3 different ways of like, and maybe it's just like 5 nuggets of information that we prioritize, but it's all about getting people to be faster, leaner with GitLab. And we can create 2 versions of each of those for cloud native and then for hybrid, so that people can leverage the Prometheus metrics that already exist, or plug and play with things like Cloud Health, or expose an API endpoint for AWS management engine so they can just suck that data in from AWS and display it in GitLab. Because that's what they're wanting to do. They want to aggregate themselves or extract themselves, but also we got to think about how to solve this hybrid deployment model, because today it's impossible to do in GitLab. But I want to drive this. I want to help. I want to parse this work out so we can meaningfully solve these problems. And I know that our customers today are not happy with what Rayana and I have built. So we need to act fast and like actually put something out there that people want to use. I'm sorry I have to leave. I feel awful, but thank you for this conversation. I'll be pinging you all on issues too.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. A quick check-in with everyone else. It sounds like we have tons of ideas and starting points that we could actually move to like an issue or something like that. So Jackie and others can also participate. Do we want to do that? Or do we feel like staying on the call and chatting some more?
Well, I think we have a lot of really think big ideas, but maybe we can take, not the whole 20 minutes, but a few minutes and talk about what would be a smallest iteration that would give someone not just data, but potentially like a view of something has changed in a direction I don't want, and here is a thing I can go do about it. Even if that thing is, hey, your wall clock time increased by 25% between this pipeline and this pipeline, go look at that one. What did you change? Or contact your SA to get help. Here's a blog post, a super simple link to a thing, not even a go fix it. Is there an even simpler iteration than that? I'm finding my iterations lately aren't simple enough.
I'm not sure, because what I feel like they're asking is something that's not that simple to give them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we tried simple and they're like, yeah, that's nice. I want more. I want something more actionable and more intelligent than what you can give me. I mean, I don't know if we can compare pipelines from the last run to this run and say, over here in this general area of the pipeline, it looks like that took longer instead of just the whole entire clock time. I don't know, like, get a little bit more specific.
So let's ask that question, and I'll make sure, let's see if we can answer that question. So let's just say today Darren wants to go and say I have a project in GitLab, and let's just call it Darren's project, right? Simple one, right? Darren's project. And let's just say I don't change the pipeline file. Maybe this is a really bad example, but anyway, let's bear with me. Maybe let's just say I don't change the pipeline file, right? And I run it every morning, 8 o'clock, right? If I want to get today a baseline view of the performance for the past week, how would I do that in GitLab? Of each of those runs, like my Monday morning, my Tuesday, do I have to go into each pipeline view and say, to, Monday it took 2 minutes, on Tuesday it took 1.5 minutes, on Wednesday it took 3 minutes? How do I get that aggregated baseline in terms of what it's been doing? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Is it helpful to have a baseline? Because to James' point, to me, when I hear James say I need to make a decision, I always kind of go back to my data warehousing days, and I'm kind of thinking, what's my baseline? You know what I mean? Kind of what am I expecting to be the threshold of reasonable performance that gives me like an alert, hey, something has changed in a good or bad way, and we go figure out why.
It looks like in the pipeline list that for pipelines that are finished, you get the total runtime for them. So that's a data point that we have, but comparing those, because there's not a filter really. Oh, I guess there is a status filter. All right, so you could filter it by just the past pipelines. And then you could start to see, because they sort, I think, by pipeline ID, which is by most recent run. So yeah, you can start to compare
So
how long pipelines are taking.
So let me ask you a different, so if we were thinking about like trying to come up with like a baseline, would we want to do it at the project level? Say all of the pipelines in this project on average for the past week took this much time to run in terms of walk-up time as like your very first iteration, and see people think that's helpful. I'm just kind of totally brainstorming the smallest iteration of something that might help.
What we've done with code coverage is just make that data available as a CSV as our very first iteration. So we could, it looks like we could extract this data, like this is feeding this page from somewhere, and say, do you want to download it all? Here you go. And then you could do that.
I think one thing that it's probably not related to a baseline number, but more to like a baseline configuration, is the idea. I think many of the issues that people report when a pipeline is slow have to do a lot with how they have their GitLab CI YAML file configured. So, for example, one thing that I see a lot is that people don't cache their dependencies, and that of course increase the amount that a job takes to run, because it needs to go and download a bunch of things that in theory shouldn't. So maybe the first step, like, which is something that I always think, is we first try to teach people how to write good GitLab CI YAML files, you know, how to, I honestly think that our experience for writing GitLab CI YAML files is so bad. That's my honest opinion. Like, you open the GitLab CI YAML file, the linter is in a different page. Like, the feedback that you get from the linter is very loose, very vague. You know, like there's so little kind of like guidance and onboarding on how to efficiently write a CI configuration. You know, so
Yep.
I mean, I'm just kind of like going one step back because I feel that like before we even start like getting thresholds and like basing like, hey, this pipeline needs to take 5 or 10 minutes. Let's first like teach people how to write GitLab CI configurations, and then we can like create those baselines, you know, because right now I think if we create a baseline for anything, it's gonna be based on poor practices. If we ever kind of like take it from that perspective.
Yeah, so CI team is looking at ways to enhance the linter to give better authoring tips. Starting with, right now, linter just gives you error message when things are incorrect, but we're introducing warning messages to call out when syntax are being used not optimally. And so we're introducing that slowly, and rather than, in addition to giving that warning to the user, we're linking to the documentation to educate them how to write their CI configuration better to optimize their pipeline. And I just saw Whitaker put in the Zoom chat that she's working with Jason. Jason's focusing on CI authoring topics under the CI group. So we totally agree with what you're saying, Juan, that the first step is to make sure the customer has written their pipeline in a way to make it run optimally.
For the millions of users who already have a GitLab CI YAML, this problem still exists. And
Yeah.
they don't have a signal today of, should I go read a blog article about how to write a more efficient GitLab CI YAML?
Well, maybe
like, that could just be the action, I think.
Or one small, if we're talking about a think small first iteration, it could be that we surface the data on which jobs or pipeline, maybe just starting with jobs, is taking the longest to run, and giving the user the option to, do you want to run this through the linter tool to get the warnings for suggestions of how to better author their YAML file for that job. That might be the smallest iteration, because I know that CI team already has issues in the next and upcoming milestones to improve feedback that the linter gives. So maybe we tie into that and say, for jobs that are running slow, we just give them the option, do you want to run this to linter to get suggestions? And those suggestions not only call out the ways that they're writing, the ways that they're making mistakes and using the syntax, it also links them to documentation to educate, self-educate.
So even before that, is there something that we could expose and just say, here's your slowest job?
Yeah, maybe that one is the very smallest. Here's your slowest job. And then a later iteration is, do you want to see how you can optimize this job in the way it's authored? Yeah.
Yeah, I think exposing the here's the slowest job kind of makes sense. I'm just a little bit worried about the next step in that, because the optimization piece could become a really deep rabbit hole. Because I mean, linting is one basic thing, but these jobs are complex depending on how what they're doing, right? But maybe we don't have to solve that right now. But that's just not only concern in terms of they're like, okay, so now you're telling me the job is bad, so okay, how do I fix it? I don't know.
Yeah, there's another thing that we can approach from unrelated to how the job is configured, which is that one metric from the agenda of how long before a job starts, which has nothing to do, which is really analyzing how to optimize their whatever they have set up for compute or runners or private runners. Those configurations is another way to, I don't know what the MVC for that would be.
Yeah. I think that like we were talking about one massive dashboard or a couple of different dashboards, or data presentation views, let's call them. that data is interesting to different personas. And so we might, like, maybe the very first issue here is just identify which data maps to which persona. And then we end up with a few different MVCs for each of those personas and problem spaces of, here is the first bit of data and an action you take after you identified it's trending in the way you don't want. Because I think we talked about, you have kind of your CI or your DevOps leader for .com runners. You have a DevOps leader for self-hosted. They're probably caring about two different things, runner minutes versus efficiency. Then you have your team lead who's caring about wall clock time for their team's pipelines or their project's pipelines. Within that, they might start to care about, well, which jobs are the slowest that contribute to that slow wall clock time. So if we break it down into those three, and there might be more, those are just the three that I remember, and I'm not taking notes, thanks to everybody who is. If we make 3 issues there, we can start to at least explore what else is the problem space here? What does a potential first solution look like? Does that sound like a reasonable first step? Cool. Design folks, how do you feel about that? You've let the product folks or product managers really dominate this conversation today. Not that we would ever do that.
Sounds like that's already happening, huh?
I feel good about that. I think that that's a good next step for sure.
I like that you're turning to the user validation as well, because yeah, it's like nice to have an idea, but then it's nice to like see if that direction is correct, or like yeah, confirm the data. So sounds good.
Yeah, why don't we, towards that end, let's make these problem validation workflow issues just to validate that we're in the right problem space. And then I guess first steps would be work with our designers and our research folks around interviews or survey or however we want to take that research on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess the question I have with that is, do we need to make sure we coordinate that research effort with whatever research effort Jackie already has going on with the director level?
Yeah, I think that we take that CI/CD dashboard and we split it into 2, to be honest. I think that there's maybe the same persona who cares about the CI part of it and the CD part of it, but I think that we really should bifurcate those issues. That's a lot of data about things that are happening before deployment and things that are happening after deployment in one space that I'm not convinced the same people want to look at.
Plus, yeah, plus the data that in that issue about pipeline, she said that in solution validation, they found that users did not find that data helpful. Yeah. So that would need to be reworked anyways, and is another reason to separate it from the metrics on that dashboard around releases and deployment.
So it looks like we still have Rayana on the call. If you could weigh in on how we're thinking about this. Does it make sense to bifurcate this, or is the research you've already done really say these things should stay in the same place? This is the same persona who cares about them.
I think it makes sense to split, but there is also I think we should focus on the possibility to add so entry points to the other sections in the product, so that we make sure that the personas that that are working, for example, the release manager can also have access to, I don't know, specific parts of the pipeline. Same things with security, etc. So if we can manage that, I think it makes sense to split. But I would love to also hear Jackie's thoughts on that. But I think we can catch up with him.
Okay. I think before we break, we just need to settle on, unless it's already in the notes, who's going to create those couple of problem validation issues.
There is tons of notes. I did my best, and I highlighted the action items in bold. So yeah, I think that's we have enough for documenting it properly.
Okay.
And we also have the recording, of course.
Yeah. I'll take on starting to create those issues, but Darren and Tao, I'll tag you in those as well to help get them into the right groups that have the right DRI.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome.
Wow, what an active and interesting discussion. Thanks a lot for contributing and participating. That was awesome. And we almost used the whole time. So it sounds that the topic was really important. James, if you'll be creating issues, adding a label ThinkBIG would be very helpful for tracking the helpfulness of discussions. And I just added some links here. We're actually thinking of changing this format a little bit to make it or async or more interactive or maybe more visual. I don't know, there is some ideas outlined. If anybody's willing to help us, go leave your thoughts there. And of course, as always, if there are some retrospective things that you want to add to the issue, the links are at the bottom of the notes for this session. So thanks a lot. Let me know if I can help with following this up in any way, but this was a great discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone. Yes.
Cheers.